all units proceed to your post assignments. All units proceed to your post assignments.
Yeah, baby, get those glasses on, because with a face like this, you want to be able to see it. Hi, Scott. How you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Are you sure
fun of
you
my
see?
glasses?
No, I just noticed that you're putting your glasses on. I wasn't making fun of them at all. I said,
Well, I was cleaning them. They were actually quite dirty, so I had to clean them.
Now you can see me, is what I was saying. All right. Anyway, hello, everybody. What is this? Ask the Inspector. It's Thursday night. What a strange feeling to be doing this on a Thursday night. But wine anyway. We usually do this on Friday night. We call it the loquacious version because compared to Tuesdays, when Scott answers every question in 3 minutes or less, on Fridays, he takes his time. And that's what we're going to do tonight, Thursday this week, because Scott is traveling. This weekend, he has an event in Washington, D.C., and there it is. And the organizer of that event, Caleb Maupin, will be our guest a little bit later in the podcast, so I look forward to that. He's a cool dude in a loose mood. And what else is going on? Scott's been very busy publishing articles left and right in virtually every publication under the sun, except his own Substack, a most peculiar business plan.
I'm saving the best for last. Tomorrow, You're going to get my Substack.
All right. Here's the consortium news, and he also told them what he gave them was the best. I know how he operates. And let's see, what else do we have here? We have, I thought we have your other articles. Didn't I get? Oh, yeah, here we have another one. This is for Sputnik, because you're a Russian agent. All right.
This was the best, too. Yeah, it was a good one.
This is also the best. All right. And, I know what's new. We've been selling your autographed book at Scott Ritter Merch, and the operation is expanding. Look at this. We now have a T-shirt available there as well. Ask the Inspector, Scott Ritter Extra. So that's at Scott Ritter Merch, along with the autograph book that Scott is personally autographing and personally walking to the post office in rain, sleet, snow, hail, whatever. He gets it there. Okay. Should we get to the question, Scott? Is there anything else you want to say? You seem unusually demure this evening. Are you okay?
I'm good. I'm just a little tired, but that's okay. I'm going to have a sip of Diet Coke, and boom, I'm ready. Let's go.
That's all it takes, huh?
That's all
right. If you want to submit your questions in advance, you can do that at scottritterextra.com. And we start every episode with some questions that we already have. And then towards the latter part of the podcast, we insert questions coming in live on Facebook and YouTube. The first question comes from David Ebelhair. He told me how to pronounce his name. He asked the question last week. He feels he didn't word it correctly. And it seems like kind of a serious situation that I think, well, maybe you'd like to take another stab at it because of exactly what he's asking about. So I thought I'd give him a chance to rephrase it. Sorry about that. He's referring to how he worded it the first time. 2 women I care about from Mariupol are stuck in a refugee camp near Zhytomyr. There seems to be no further effort to evacuate them. Is Ukraine abandoning its refugees?
Well, where is Zhytomyr? Is it in Ukraine or is it in Russia? There's the $1 million question.
I think it's in Ukraine.
Well, if it's in Ukraine, then they're internally displaced refugees from Mariupol. So how are they being abandoned? If it's Zhytomyr's in Russia, then the question is, do the Ukrainians view them as Ukrainians? I mean, why would a Ukrainian, according to the Ukrainian government, flee to Russia? So I would have to get an answer to the question of where Zhytomyr is. And because it does matter. I mean,
Zhytomyr Oblast is an oblast, a province of northern Ukraine, according to the source known as Wikipedia.
Well, we can count on Wikipedia. Okay, so so they're internally displaced refugees from Mariupol. What does he want the Ukrainian government to do? They can't return them to Mariupol. That's Russia now. It's forever Russia. So, um, so where do they? I mean, this is one of the tragedies of war that there are refugees that they've lost their home. Um, I'm sure the Russians would allow them to go back, but are these people who don't want to do that? Do they identify as Ukrainian and therefore they don't want to be citizens of Russia? It's a tragic situation. It's one of the horrible realities of war. People lose their homes, they become refugees, and then they have to start all over. Eventually they're going to have to leave the refugee camp. They can do that with the assistance of the International Red Cross. They can seek to immigrate. They can resettle in Ukraine. There's it's up to them. But I don't know what more. I just don't know what the system is. Have they applied to the Ukrainian government for resettlement? Is the Ukrainian government ignoring them? I just don't know enough about the situation to speak intelligently on the matter.
Okay. Well, the guy's worried about people he cares about. So.
I share his worry. I don't want to minimize that.
Right.
It's a difficult situation.
Gene Doe, Western Europe. Considering the lack of respect for human life by the current Ukrainian government, do you think the people of Ukraine will accept a deal where Zelensky stays in power? What will happen to future peace if there's another coup d'etat?
Well, I think it's clear that Zelensky is a tool of the West, and if there is a peace deal, then Zelensky loses his utility. His sole purpose for being right now is to be able to. He's been turned. Remember, he's a construct of the West. It's the British who made him into the modern day Winston Churchill. It's the Americans who made him into the modern day Thomas Jefferson or George Washington. But all he is a Ukrainian comedian who's operating out of his depth. He has viability only if they can leverage this image they've created as a vacuum to suck in aid and assistance. And remember, Ukraine is one of the most fundamentally corrupt countries in the world, and Maverick agrees. And the assistance he's bringing in is used to line the pockets of people. This is why he's staying in power. Zelensky is a money printing machine for the corruption of Ukraine. And so he brings in this money and then he doles it out and he keeps people happy. They're stealing money left and right. The moment Zelensky stops bringing in the money, he has no legit. He's not a good leader. He's not a strategic thinker. He's a tool. He reads from scripts. He's an actor. And when he stops doing, if he can't buy people off, if he's no longer bringing in money, he can't inspire people with his innate leadership skills. And so he'll be removed from office. And the most likely way of him being removed from office is the old-fashioned way, bullet in the back of his head.
That sounds like it could ruin his whole weekend.
Well, he's ruined a lot of people's weekends, so I don't really have too much sympathy for him.
Okay. James from North Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. What do you make of Poland saying they will have no choice to enter the war if Ukraine loses?
Well, Poland didn't say that. Let's be clear about it. It was the Polish ambassador to France who said that. And almost as soon as he said that, Poland went, nope, 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 nope. He don't speak for us. It ain't us speaking. That's some drunken idiot in Paris speaking. Had too much wine. See, Jeff, there's a danger in drinking wine because you say things you might regret. Like if Ukraine loses the war, Poland will have no choice but to go in.
I just get more sappy and tell you how much I love you when I drink too much. That's all.
Well, you just make me blush. That's why I wore this shirt, though, because the shirt will absorb the blush and then we won't. But look, the bottom line is the Polish government has disowned that statement. It was a ridiculous statement, but you have to ask yourself, why would a Polish ambassador say that? Is it his own personal belief, or is it a belief drawn from informal discussions with other Poles of similar status and level? And I think it actually reflects a desire, not an intent, but a desire on many Poles that they feel that they need to go into Western Ukraine, that this is a unique opportunity to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. And so there's this desire, but then the problem is turning that desire into reality is a bridge too far for Poland. They simply don't have the ability to do that. And NATO's certainly not going to back them up on this one.
I wonder what you think of this as a writer, or if you've even noticed this before, even when it's not, controversial or anything like that, just as a routine thing in the world of journalism. People often write, Russia says, or Russia thinks, or the U.S. thinks or says, as if like there's some formal body that gets together to, issue a statement on behalf of everybody in the country. And it's like, what do you mean? Who said it? Have you noticed this kind of happens a lot?
Oh, it happens. Well, it's the same thing. Family of 4 killed by SUV. SUV didn't kill him. The driver behind the SUV.
Well.
No, I'm just saying it's the same thing. It's like you're applying, you're painting something with a brush. For instance, Kirby, the spokesperson, John Kirby, the spokesperson for the White House. Ostensibly, Kirby speaks. When he speaks for the White House. So when he speaks, you can say the White House says. But the problem is, it doesn't work that. It's John Kirby saying, because John Kirby's up there. He's the one doing the words. So the right thing is to say the White, because the White House can't speak.
Yeah, right. So you've noticed this. Yeah, I find it very, very odd. I don't know if anybody else has ever noticed it, but I think it's weird.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott and Jeff in agreement on a journalistic habit.
Uh-oh. We can't.
It doesn't feel right that we're in agreement. Something.
No, it's very uncomfortable.
No, we'll find something else to fight about. Just remain calm. Bo John from Serbia. Russia knows about and sees convoys and trains of military equipment pouring into Ukraine. How come they don't destroy railway stations, airports, or highways to stop that from happening?
$1 million question, because that would represent a massive escalation. I think people fail to comprehend that Russia entered this war looking for an off-ramp. They didn't want to go to war. That's why it was called a special military operation. The whole idea was that Russia would bum rush Ukraine and present them with the inevitability of defeat and get them to go to the negotiating table, where Russia was willing to cut a very generous peace agreement. And we know this because when Russia started this special military operation, they said their goal was denazification and demilitarization. That was on February 24th. On 1 April, after 3 rounds of negotiation in Gomel, Belarus in early March, Russia was ready to accept a peace deal that had Ukraine acknowledging the independence of the Donbass, of Donetsk and Lugansk, acknowledging that Crimea was forever Russia, and saying, we're not going to be part of NATO. That was it. There was no demilitarization. The Ukrainian army was there. There was no denazification. The Zelensky government was there. According to former Israeli prime minister, Putin gave assurances that he wouldn't kill Zelensky, which told Zelensky that there was. And if you take a look at what the Russians did after bum rushing, right at the end in late March, they said, "Hey, look, it's a good, is a good faith gesture. We'll withdraw from around Kiev." They weren't pushed back. Anybody who thinks the Ukrainian military pushed the Russians out of Ukraine, you don't know anything. The Russians left. They left out of Sumy. They left that whole area voluntarily as a good faith gesture on the eve of a peace agreement where Russia said, we'll leave the rest of Ukraine too, just not the Donbass, just not Crimea. They were ready to make that deal. And since then, even though the deal was rejected, I think Russia has tried to keep the door open for the possibility of a negotiated settlement. And In order to do that, a couple things have to be, because you might as well ask, why is Zelensky still alive? Because I will tell you right now with absolute certainty, was it the United States that was engaged in this kind of activity, this kind of conflict? We'd have killed him already, or we would have darn sure tried. There wouldn't be a presidential palace standing. There wouldn't be a Rada able to operate. There wouldn't be a Department of Defense underground bunker, Ministry of Defense underground bunker. It would have all been destroyed by the United States Air Force with deep penetration bombs, blowing it all to hell. And we'd be hunting them down because they're legitimate command and control targets. Why isn't Russia doing that? Because they want the Zelensky government there. They want to encourage the Zelensky government to communicate with people so that the potential for a diplomatic outcome can be reached. On the same vein, why hasn't Russia dropped every bridge in Ukraine? Because Russia's not at war with Ukraine. Russia's really sincerely trying to preserve as much critical infrastructure as possible, because at some point in time, Russia would like this conflict to end, and they recognize that there will be a need to reconstitute that which has been destroyed. So why destroy everything? Now, there could be a point in time where the West has pushed Russia to the brink, where Russia says, no more. We're not going to let any more tanks in, any more anything in. Take out all the rail lines, take out all the highways, take out all the tunnels. But when you make that decision, you're at war. And Russia's not at war right now. They, again, if you blow all those up, you sort of take the wind out of any Chinese peace deal. I mean, President Xi just came to Russia 3 days with Vladimir Putin, a game-changing, radical shift in the whole way the world operates. And people sometimes lose sight of that. But one of the key aspects of that is that Russia needed to yield to China's Westphalian principles of sovereignty and respect China's desire to at least put a peace plan on the table. And you can't say China will respect your right to put a peace plan on the table unless you're willing to accept that peace plan. And I wrote about it. That was the best article I wrote this week until I wrote the other ones. But but the point is, so what kind of gesture would Russia be sending to the Chinese if they said, yeah, hey, do that peace thing? That's cool. Meanwhile, we're going to blow up all the tunnels, all the bridges, all the highways. The Chinese are going, but why would you do that? Well, because they're bringing stuff, but we want a peace plan. Why would you destroy the critical infrastructure? What signal are you sending to the Ukrainians? Are you at war with Ukraine? And the Russians would go, well, yeah. Then the Chinese said, but then you're not serious about peace. Now you've disrespected us, and now you have tension in the family. Russia's not in the escalation business. They're in the escalation management business, and that means they're going to manage everything. They have just, between China and Russia, what they've just done is literally one of the most fundamental changes in global geopolitics in hundreds of years. This is bigger. What we're looking at too, it's not just a success for Russia and China, but it's the collapse of the United States. We just haven't realized it yet. They've kicked us out of the Middle East. I don't know if everybody recognized that, but the Chinese went in and had the Saudis and the Iranians make good. Guess what else just happened? Because of that, the Saudis just made good with Syria. It's over for the United States. It's finished. We're done in the Middle East. And right now, the way things are going, we're going to be done in Africa. While this meeting was taking place, all the African nations were in Russia talking to the Russians, making good with the Russians. And, this is after we made an Africa Command. What does that mean, Africa Command? Military. That's all we care about. That's all we can do. What was the biggest player in the Middle East? Central Command. So our whole thing was about the military, about muscle, about bullying people, about war, about death, about destruction. And the Middle East said, the hell with that. We're doing the Chinese thing, which is about, peace, prosperity, economics. We like that one. And what's Africa saying? Yeah, we want the peace, prosperity, and economic stuff too. So we have Central Command and Africa Command sort of being nullified. We have European Command right now creating a war in Ukraine that Europe's getting tired of. Has anybody looked at Paris lately? I know it's not about the war, but it's indirectly about the war because the decision to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 because France is bankrupt. Why is France bankrupt? Well, because they're not buying cheap Russian gas anymore. So they don't have any money. Their economy doesn't work. Their industries are shutting down. So the president said, we got to raise the retirement age so we can preserve our economy. And the French people are done with it. They're burning Paris. They're burning Bordeaux. Europe is fed up with this American nonsense. We're looking at the fall of Rome, the collapse of Rome. Rome didn't fall overnight. It took a little bit of time. But right now, the United States is Rome, and we're in the process of collapsing. And this is what's happening. Now, why would Russia want to screw that up? Because what I just described is huge. And what? Now you want the Russians to blow up some bridges and some roads and some tunnels to stop a couple tanks from coming in? 14 British tanks. You want to stop that? You know how they'll be stopped? When they go to the front line and a Russian soldier with a AT-4 Coronet or some other anti-tank missile blows it up, or a T-90 comes in with their Svets-2 anti-tank missile, bam, hits it, blows it up. You want to bring in 14 more? Go ahead, bring them in. They'll kill them. Leopards, bring on all the leopards you want. Martyrs, bring it. Bradleys, let's do it. Open up. Fact is, what the Russians should be doing is just opening up all the highways and saying, bring it in, bring it in, bring it in, wave it in, because they're going to kill them all. There's nothing NATO can do to help Ukraine win this war. All NATO assistance does is increase the casualty levels for the Ukrainians. And that's just the reality. I know it's frustrating for people to sit there and say, why aren't they shutting down the bridges? They don't need to. That's an unnecessary escalation. Everything that comes across dies. That's the reality.
Great explanation. Brian Egger from Wales. I was reading about the use of depleted uranium in Iraq. Apparently, 1,700 tons was left on the battlefield, and even today, thousands of people and babies are affected. It's comparable to Agent Orange in Vietnam that's still causing a vast number of birth defects. Could any of this be classified as a war crime?
That's a good question. Could it be classified as a war crime? A key element is intent. And there, I think, but here, here's the thing. The United States government has deliberately suppressed any meaningful study into depleted uranium. One of the things we do is we say, well, it's not radioactive. There's no radiation hazard. Pretty much true. I mean, it's got low levels of beta radiation. If you inhale it and you get it in your lungs, it's going to sit there and give you cancer. There's no doubt about it. And you can inhale it. The thing about a depleted uranium penetrating rod is, how does it penetrate? It hits, and as it bores its way through, things vaporize off and turn into dust, and the dust hangs there, and you breathe it in, and then you get cancer and you die 20 years later. Or it goes into the soil, and then it gets kicked up and people breathe it in. It goes into the water and you ingest it. It's everywhere. That's what it does. So we know this. It's not the radiation that gets you. It's not about you have to go on Geiger counters and, oh Lord, the radiation levels are unreal, crazy. No. But see, that's where we're misleading to people, because say the radiation threat is very low, very minor. Okay, but we're not talking about the radiation threat. We're talking about the fact that it's a heavy metal, and we're talking about the fact that it's poison, that it's toxic, and that, for instance, in Kosovo, because we fired 30,000 depleted uranium rounds, there's a higher level of leukemia that's taking place. That can, the cause and effect relationship is definite. You put up 30,000 rounds of depleted uranium, the leukemia level goes up. The places where we use a lot of depleted uranium, it goes up. You use less, it lowers. If you didn't use any, it's down to normal. Gee, that's a cause and effect relationship that even a Marine can understand. But what the government says is there's no proof. That means nothing. Just because we used a lot of DU and it increases the level of leukemia, it proves nothing. Proves nothing. Okay, then we go to Iraq. 1,700 tons of depleted uranium. And I normally I would just say, don't look at these pictures, guys. But now I'm going to say, go look at the pictures. Go Google Iraqi children, Fallujah depleted uranium, and look at the pictures. Get physically sick to your stomach. Thousands of them. deformities like you've never seen before. And it's only because of the depleted uranium we put into the soil. It's only because, and then take a look at the mothers and the suffering that they have. Look at the cancer that's affecting everybody that lives there. We have poisoned Iraq, and this is never going away, ladies and gentlemen. Depleted uranium is there forever. You can't clean it up. It's part of the environment. So future generations that live there are condemned to have very high levels of mortality, birth defects, cancer, the whole thing. We know this. We know this. And so now, while you may not have been able to call it a war crime when we first used it because people were, well, we're not sure about it and all that stuff, we know it now. We know it. This is why everybody's going, Ritter's so pro-Russian. He just closes his eyes to everything that Russia does. They use depleted uranium too. No, they don't. That's the difference. You see, they used to, the Soviets used to use it just like we did. They made an anti-tank round for their T-72 main battle tank so it could kill our M1A1 Abrams. But around 2000, the Russian government went, isn't that stuff poison? And the Russian military went, oh yeah, it's really poison. They said, so the Americans and the British are saying that, we got like the VA saying there's guys that get cancer from this stuff, from using this stuff. Is that true? Yes. Do we want to poison Russian troops? No. And what about the civilians? I mean, so we're going to go fight and defend an area and ground, but we're going to pollute the ground. The civilians are going to suffer. Yeah. Do we want to do that? No. So what's the benefit? It's cheaper, boss. You see, it's a really good tank killer. It's cheaper to make. We got a lot of depleted uranium. It's there. Why don't we use it? But it's poison. Yeah. What's the replacement? Tungsten. It's expensive. Well, why don't we spend more money up front making stuff that costs us more here, but when we use it, the penalty is less. The Russians got rid of depleted uranium as ammunition. They don't use it anymore. And the reason is because they know it's poison. That's one of the reasons why they're so angry at the British, because the Russians are saying, don't bring your poison in here because it will never go away, ever. Once you use depleted uranium in significant quantities, you have contaminated the earth, contaminated the soil. And it's the Ukrainians that'll pay the price. It's the Russians that'll pay the price. That's why they're angry. It's not about, a nuclear bomb or things of that nature. It's literally about poisoning the environment permanently. And that's why the Russians are so upset about this, because this is deliberate intent. So here's where the British could legitimately be charged with war crimes, because they are deliberately undertaking an action that they know will result in a unnecessary exposure of risk to a civilian population.
Odious.
Maria Nizy Rocky from London. If Ukraine is going to use depleted uranium shells, then can't Russia warn Ukraine that Russia will, well, you sort of just addressed that Russia will bombard all major Ukrainian cities with depleted uranium missiles too. Well, I guess if they're not really going to use them, they're not going to warn or threaten.
Well, not just that. I mean, Russia doesn't, that's just not how Russia operates. I mean, I don't know what part of the Russians are behaving. If people take a look at the massive amount of deaths that have taken place in this war so far, massive amounts of deaths. The Ukrainians have probably lost more men in combat in 1 year than the United States lost in both the Pacific and European theaters for the entire Second World War. This is huge. Now, normally in modern combat of this nature, one would expect a correlation of close to 1-to-1 in terms of civilian casualties. That's not it. They're talking, 9, 10, 11, 12,000 Ukrainian civilian dead. That's a lot. I don't want to minimize that a lot. I mean, that's disturbing. But most people don't understand that when we liberated Normandy, D-Day, the Great Normandy invasion, we killed 60,000 French civilians. 60,000 French civilians died. And people were like, that's okay, because you're liberating France. The Russians aren't engaged in the kind of, targeting and such operations that would produce civilian casualties. They are deliberately avoiding civilian casualties, and they pay a higher price as a result. So that's their whole approach, is to minimize risk to the civilians. The West doesn't get it because the second I say that, people go, "That's just Russian propaganda, Ritter. You're just smoking the Russian dope." No, I'm not. If they have good dope, maybe I should. But
They tell me it's illegal there. We were talking about that on the Sunday podcast, by the way.
that's right. We're not allowed to smoke dope in Russia. That's right. You go to jail for a long time. Okay, so we're just going to drink Russian vodka instead. That we can do. But my point is, no, this is the truth. The Russians have behaved in a way that's beyond. This is why this whole international criminal court thing is just mind-boggling. You're coming after Russia as war criminals? For what? What have they done? Where's the war crime? Bucha? Don't take me down that path. We know who did Bucha. The Ukrainians have all but admitted they've done Bucha. But it's the Ukrainians that the Washington Post and Human Rights Watch have called out for using their own population as human shields. And if you read the accounts of Mariupol, even Bakhmut, I mean, they got this old Russian lady, Ukrainian lady actually, but she's there, and she's just talking about how the Wagner guys, Wagner, those evil mercenaries that we call criminals, she said they came in her house, they were attacking, they came and found her, and they're like, "What the hell's this old lady doing in the basement here?" Well, she lives there, but she's been living in the middle of a war zone. So what these guys did is they literally covered her and took her out, and one of them died protecting her with his body. He got killed. The other two were wounded, but they evacuated her. That's what the Russians do. That's what they've been doing over and over and over again. And people don't get it. This is why this whole concept of an international criminal court is just ludicrous.
Craig Z from Long Island. Long Island. Do you notice any similarity between the current Ukraine-Russia war and the Yugoslav wars? How NATO's fingerprints can be seen on the orchestration of both?
Well, I mean, yes, they're both part of a NATO plan. I mean, Yugoslavia was an earlier manifestation of it. That was a little bit cruder by NATO, but it was definitely. We know that the decision was made by NATO, by European countries, by Germany. Remember, it was Germany's recognition of Croatia that set this whole thing off. When Germany said, "We recognize that Croatia is independent," that blew up Yugoslavia. And then NATO got involved. The United States ended up getting involved, and that's how they solved the Yugoslav problem. They solved the Balkan problem. Now NATO has, they've been expanding. They took it up to the Russian border for what? What was the purpose? Because this was all a NATO strategy, and the purpose was to dismember Russia. That's it. Anybody who says that NATO is a peaceful organization, there's nothing peaceful about NATO. It's a bloodthirsty organization. It's transformed itself from a defensive alliance into an alliance that believes in European domination, regional domination. Libya, is that Europe? Nope. Afghanistan? Nope. Iraq? Nope. None of that's Europe. Now they're talking about the Pacific. So NATO is about global hegemony. And what makes that happen? The Americans. We're the ones who are driving this all. So it's American fingerprints and the whole thing. I think Yugoslavia is more of a European thing. I think the Europeans led us into that. Sort of like Libya, even though it was Barack Obama's worst foreign policy mistake, he acknowledges it. It was France that pretty much got us involved in Libya because I think their president, Sarkozy maybe was his name. I have to go back. Was taking money from the Libyans, and he got caught, and he was trying to clean it up. So we went to war to clean it up. I mean, literally, that's why we went to war in Libya. There was no human rights violations. There was not on the scale that they said. It was all manufactured event by France, and then Italy came in because they wanted the oil. The next thing you know, NATO's sucked in, and then America comes in, and boom, Hillary Clinton gets the cackle. We came, we saw, he died. But it was a horrible mistake. And look at Libya today, totally broken, dysfunctional. Why? Because some French idiot took a bribe and it was getting called out on it. I think he was found guilty anyways, so it doesn't matter.
This is all terrible, but there's a sunny side. We just sold our first T-shirt.
Really?
Yep, that's right. There it is. Scott Ritter.
Don't you have a cheer thing? Don't you have a button? You can push a button and have people cheering, or have a hoo-yah? Doesn't this get a hoo-yah?
Hoo-ah! Hoo-ah!
There we go.
ScottRitterMerch.com. Yes, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, but please increase our revenue with T-shirt sales. Thank you. Yeah, you got to have priorities, Scott. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Bad Bob from Pender Harbor, British Columbia. Ron DeSantis with Piers Morgan was troubling on the subject of Russia-Ukraine. On the Donbass region and Crimea, he said, Russia has had that, I don't think, legitimately. If I could snap my fingers, I'd give it back to Ukraine 100%. On the ICC determination, he said, I think that he is a war criminal, referring to Putin. Trump looks better each day, says Bad Bob. And what does Scott say?
I think I'm not a fan of Ron DeSantis at all. I think he's a lightweight on national security issues, and this proves it. And remember, the president of the United States is all about national security. That's his number one function. And this man, he was coached to say the right thing. Understand that everything that Ron DeSantis just said there is a reversal because DeSantis doesn't have cojones. And if you want to be president, you better have a pair. He doesn't. He got out there. He had an old-time Republican operative coach him, a guy who coached Ronald Reagan, coach him on to say the right thing about Ukraine, and he did. He got out there and he said things, and suddenly, little Marco Rubio started spouting off and all that, and DeSantis got a little scared. And he's like, "Oh God, I don't understand. I can't stand up for this." So he flip-flopped, and that's what he did. He flip-flopped straight off the bat. He can't do this job. Any Americans who think that Ron DeSantis is going to be the president of the United States, think again. He's not up to the task, and that just proved it right there. The most critical issue of the time, how to deal with Russia, he flip-flopped without, just buckled under the pressure. Donald Trump has a lot of baggage and a lot of hurdles to go through, but on the issue of Russia right now, I call it the Trump standard. You played the clips the other week.
I would love to be able to get along with Russia.
There you go. Get along with Russia. I mean, if you're not saying that, you can't be president of the United States. And if you're not saying, why the heck are we dealing with NATO, you can't be president of the United States. If you're not questioning the role of American hegemony and the damage it's done, if you don't recognize that our arrogance has brought Russia and China together and they've created this unbeatable team, we can't win against them. We can't. What we can do is manage our defeat, but we can't win against them. But if you have idiots like Ron DeSantis and others out there saying stuff like this, guys, the collapse will even be quicker. If Donald Trump can overcome the baggage and he can focus on these things, these are the three big ticket items. Arms control. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to survive another decade, we need arms control. Literally, if we don't have arms control, we're all going to die because idiots like Ron DeSantis are going to come in and say things like, if I could snap my finger, I'd give it back. What do you mean, snap your finger? Give it back. If you try to give it back, you understand that you're attacking Mother Russia and they're going to use nuclear weapons against you, Ron, because Russia ain't giving up Russia. It just isn't going to happen. So Ron DeSantis has to stop being stupid. So arms control, that needs to be your number one priority. 2, NATO. Why does it exist? It's proven that it's nothing more than an extension of American foreign policy, and American foreign policy is corrupt as the day is long. We need to get rid of NATO. If there wasn't a NATO, we wouldn't have a Ukraine today. That's the thing, and Trump is questioning that. And the last one is hegemony. I mean, Trump made some amazing statements about the problems of the world are because of us. The most honest thing anybody's ever said. Imagine that. We're to blame. So, boom. Now, someone says, I'm not sure about Trump. Anita, I'm with you. I'm not sure about Trump. I'm calling it the Trump standard. It's there. Now, if you want to run for president and you want to beat Donald Trump, you have to match that. Because if you don't match that, you're the problem, not the solution. The Trump standard is the solution. Now, the question is Trump the right guy to take that solution across the finish line? That's a question that a lot of Americans are going to have to answer. But we know it can't be Joe Biden, and we know it's not going to be Ron DeSantis. It isn't going to be Nikki Haley. It's not going to be Mike Pompeo. It's not going to be. There's no one out there right now who has announced. Pardon?
Trump is the only one pushing the Trump standard.
He's the only one right now. So, well, he's running for office.
Yeah, literally. I don't know.
But my point is that, I'm glad Trump did this. I'm glad he put the Trump standard out there, because now if there's other people out there, this could be the year. 2024 could be the year of an independent candidate. Could be, because Biden is corrupt. If anybody's thinking about voting for Joe Biden in 2024, you're insane, literally insane. And if you're thinking about voting for Donald Trump, you're close to being insane. This is the chance for a viable third-party candidate to step up and say, I'm the person.
Well, same question though, Scott. Who?
Well, there's some people out there.
You want to say a name? Would that be?
I'm not going to say a name. It's up to them to say a name. My job isn't to announce anybody's candidacy. It's their job to announce.
All right.
They know who they are. And so
in other words, you can't think of anybody.
That's not true, Jeff. I know exactly who I'm talking about, but it's not my place to make this announcement.
It's not nobody's asking you to make an announcement. I'm asking you who you think might be electable. Why don't you want to say?
People might be electable.
Why don't you? Okay, I won't push you to say it, but will you say why you don't want to say it?
Maybe I had a conversation with somebody, and therefore it's not my place to throw that name out there. Oh, maybe Scott Ritter knows a little bit more than you think he knows.
Maybe that's that photo I saw with you huddling with Marianne Williamson in a coffee shop.
No, Marianne Williamson. No.
I know who. I won't say it because you just said you don't want it to be said. I know who it is. I'll tell you later. I'll find out later if I'm right. All right, Meta. Is that the name of the parent company of Facebook? Oh no, that's Meta, I guess. Meta. Yeah.
Meta might be the Swedish version.
What's up with those two dots over the O? Am I supposed to be an educated American to figure out how to pronounce that? Norrköping is Norrköping. How would you say that, Scott? You don't know either.
Kolping. I think it's a Kolping.
All right, Mato from Sweden. What could be the reasoning behind the UK-Japan agreement from a few months ago about allowing their military on their territory?
I don't know. Look, the British military, you could take all of them, put them in a soccer stadium, have 40,000 unsold seats. It's a tiny little pathetic organization that's getting smaller. You know, Ben Wallace keeps talking. And whoever the new prime minister is, begins with an R, S. Yeah, Sunak. Sunak. They change prime ministers so often, it's hard for me to keep up with them. But he's out there saying tough things. All the Brits say tough things, but then the reality is they go down and they say, "Hey, how's our military looking? Can't afford it, boss. Shrink it." Okay, so what have the British agreed to? They're going to put some Marines on the Kuril Islands to do some training. Some Royal Marines. Now, Royal Marines are tough guys. I wouldn't mess with them. Not in a bar fight. But company, it's nothing. It's pure politics. This is a joke. You can't sustain them. How are the British going to sustain them? You know, how are you going to get the Royal Marines from the United Kingdom to Japan? Well, you're going to fly them in, of course. They're going to fly in. Okay, now they're there, and they're going to do what? Where's your amphibious assault landing craft? Oh, you're going to have to borrow the Japanese? You might as well just call them Japanese Marines then, because the British can't do this anymore. This is a joke, literal joke. It's a laughing stock. The British should just go away. There shouldn't be an English-speaking person with a British accent in the Pacific anymore. They're not allowed to be there because they're just a pathetic little country with an economy. If you take a look at Europe, as bad as the European economy is, only the Brits are collapsing. They're the ones that are in definite recession. They're done. They're finished. And it's only going to get worse because they have corruption. They have stupidity. We have great soldiers, just not enough. Well, okay, great. You can train that one good soldier. And then when the bullet hits him right here, you got no good soldiers. Good soldiers don't count unless you have enough of them, and you don't. And so that's the bottom line. But the British should be focusing on, maybe protecting the British Isles. Remember Boris Johnson? Sunak, Truss, Johnson. Okay, so he was back there. He was the guy telling the Swedes and the Finns, join NATO, and while they're waiting for you, we'll guarantee your security. Really, Boris? With what? With what? What are you going to guarantee the security of Finland and Sweden with? The Royal Marines. Wait, half of them are going to go off to Japan because of the stupid deal you just signed. We got more Royal Marines. Not too many more, Boris, and they can't sustain themselves in combat. They're a light infantry force. What's going to back them up? The Royal Air Force? There's not much there, Boris. The Royal Army? They're not there either. Territorial units? No, you can't even get a brigade out, Boris. The British are a joke. Their military used to be good, used to be big, used to be something. I remember in the Gulf War, Marine Corps, we had the opportunity to get ready to fight with the 7th Armored Brigade, the Desert Rats. Funny thing about the Desert Rats is they took one look at the Marine plan and went, we're out of here. We want to go fight with the U.S. Army because these Marines are crazy. They're going to do a frontal assault on the Iraqi lines, and we don't want to do that. Well, you should have stuck with us, guys, because guess what? We won the war. The Army was out there fooling around the Western. Anyways, my point is the British today, they've got nothing. I don't mean to pick on them too much, but I'm going to pick on them a lot. And the second you see the British government offering to do something in the Pacific, are you kidding me? They can't do it. It's a joke. It's stupid. It's a headline grabbing nothing.
All right. I won't even say this if you don't want me to. But could I? Do I have your permission to guess who this presidential candidate would be? Can I say this person's initials?
It's just freedom of speech, man. You can say anything you want.
Well, I know that, but that's not the standard here.
But I'm just going to put my Diet Coke up to my lips so I disguise any
reaction. All right. Let me not just blurt it out. Let's start with initial. Let's start with gender. We have not even said whether or not I believe this is a male or a female. First of all, I will say I believe this is a male. Look at the reaction on his face. No, can't tell. He's not giving anything away. Poker face. All right.
belief system, man. This
man is not particularly tall. Look at that. He doesn't give anything away. This man is not particularly tall, but his wife is, and she's much younger. His initials are DK. Okay, that's my guess. Dennis Kucinich. Scott gives away nothing.
He lives in Poughkeepsie, so we can go down to Poughkeepsie and take him out to dinner at Farmers and Chefs and ask him.
All right, very good. SW from Oregon. Several pre-SMO studies and surveys into Bandera favorability found no link between the current independence movement and neo-Nazi ideology. The areas of noted neo-Nazi activity are where Bandera is least favorable. You've mentioned photos, but can you point to any research to suggest a widespread link?
Oh my God, are you shitting me?
I sense a rant coming. I sense a rant coming. Let me make sure I have a full.
I'm going to calm down. I'm getting the sign from my wife to calm down.
Remain calm.
I'm going to calm down.
We have a guest coming on, Charlotte. We don't want to have too much anger permeating the scene when he comes.
Open your fucking eyes, ears, and your brain. Please don't hide behind this kind of crap here. This is embarrassing for you and anybody watching this. If you want to pretend that fucking Bandera isn't a problem, that he's not a reality, ask yourself, why do the Ukrainian paratroopers sing his goddamn anthem when they graduate? Ask yourself why the #1 general in Ukraine, Zaluzhny, proudly poses behind a photograph with Bandera behind him. We could just go on. Why does Zelensky have to sit there and say Bandera is a pretty cool guy? Why did the Ukrainian ambassador to Germany visit the goddamn grave of this asshole? So that's it. I'm calming down now because we have Mr. Khalid Maupin coming on, and I want to be in a very good mood. But what a fucking stupid question!
Unequivocally detestable.
The way you just pronounced our guest's name suggests I may be mispronouncing it. It's not Caleb.
Mispronouncing it.
Oh, well, it's an unusual name, and when you've just seen it in written form, one wouldn't know. I've been saying Caleb. You just said Caleb or something like that.
Well, because I was angry and I was mispronouncing it, and my wife was sending me signals to calm down, and I was trying to calm down. But
I like how that was the calm version of your reaction. That was very funny.
Oh no, I could have gone off. That's the dumbest question I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was deliberately dumb.
All right, yeah. Well, maybe. Maybe, you know, I think sometimes I'm not doing it, I swear, but I wonder if some of these questions are just designed to rile you up.
I think that one was designed to. Well, no, what it was is it's a NAFO. Look, I can sniff it out. That's a NAFO type stupidity. That's up there with, anyways. My blood
All right.
pressure.
I try to do kind of an even sampling of really good questions and others not so good, just so you get the whole emotional spectrum. And people wind up. I hope you. I've been calling Kevin Michelizzi a curator, but that's what I do too. I'm curating these questions. What do you think about my curational skills? Is that a word?
I think it's awesome. First of all, I appreciate it because you see, this is like a cardio workout. I don't have to go to the gym after this because basically get my system up, then I calm down, then I come up again, and it's like a nice cardio workout.
But what people might be interested to know about Scott is he's not a guy who often gives praise or criticism. So one is left wondering sometimes how you feel.
Jeff, I think that your curation. See, now you trapped me. You trapped me into mispronouncing a word. So,
curational skills. I'm not even sure that word exists.
Well, we just made it up. We could do a T-shirt.
All right.
Speaking
of which, we just sold a second T-shirt. Fantastic. Oh. They're selling like, I won't say hotcakes. They're selling like T-shirts. I don't want them to sell like hotcakes. Hotcakes have a very short shelf life. These T-shirts you'll have forever. High quality. Look at that. Fabulous. All right. Let's. Caleb Maupin will be joining us shortly, and we'll find out for sure how to pronounce his name. You're going to be doing his event in Washington this weekend. Also, next week, you and I will have our Tearful reunion. We haven't actually hung out in person in a very long time, but that's going to happen in the Austin area next week. 2 events, one in Liberty Hill and one in Elgin. So that should be one heck of a time. Trisha G. from Michigan, USA. What is the likelihood of Zelensky agreeing to a peace plan now? Is Xi's offer going to be extended, or is this the last attempt? What do you think? How does this war end?
If the Chinese put a peace plan on the table in front of Zelensky, it's going to be a serious peace plan. The Chinese aren't amateurs. They're not here to be token. It's going to be a serious peace plan, which means that Putin has agreed it. Z isn't going to commit to anything that hasn't been already agreed to Putin when they met. So put it on the table, and it has to be a serious plan, meaning that it has to give Zelensky something. And I think what the Chinese could do is put a plan on that allows Zelensky to live. That's sort of a plus. It allows them to keep Odessa, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkov. It allows them to keep their army, even though pushed back 150 kilometers from the border with Russia. It allows them to exist without an occupation force seeking forcible denazification. There might have to be some constitutional modifications to take that Stepan Bandera guy out because he's real. He's not an imagination.
Can you document it? Can you document it?
Oh, I can document it. I can document it. But then I think the Chinese would say things to Zelensky like, this $1 trillion infrastructure damage that's been done. We have this cool thing called Belts and Roads Initiative, and we could come in and work with you to rebuild your country and help jumpstart your economy. There's things we can do there, and they'll give them that offer. But you can't keep that offer literally on the table for a long time because Russia has all the momentum right now on the battlefield. I know people are saying, wait till the Ukrainian counterattack. Okay, we'll wait. But meanwhile, while we're waiting, the Russians are getting ready to take Bakhmut. Big tough fight, but they're making progress. Dika is breaking up. Seversk up further. There's going to be other things Russia's breaking through all over. And the last thing the Russians want to do is go, time out, stop, let the Ukrainians regroup. You got the Ukrainians on their back hill. They're falling back. They're confused. They're out of reserves. They're using up too much ammunition. Confusion. Halt. For how long? How long are you going to halt this? Because every day you halt gives a chance for the Ukrainians to regroup, to refit, reconfigure their forces so that if they turn it down. And here's the other thing we know about the Ukrainians. They're lying sacks of manure. We know why. Well, gosh, the Minsk Accords. We now know that they lied. They weren't serious about it, and neither was the West. France and Germany lied. It was all a sham. Now we know about the 1 April thing. Not only, it wasn't just that that Boris Johnson went in and pulled the plug, according to the head of Ukrainian intelligence. It was always a lie. They were never negotiating in good faith, ever. So now Zelensky comes in and says, hey, we'll take that ceasefire. And Russia's not playing that game. Russia's told China, you give him 24 hours, man. That's it, 24 hours. And if he's not willing to do it, we're punching through. We're not stopping our momentum for anybody. Fact is, if I were the Russians, I wouldn't agree to any ceasefire. I would just say, no, we're going. You have a chance. Peace plan's on the table there. Let us know when you're ready to sign the paperwork. But until then, we're going, because we can't trust you anymore. You're liars. You've always lied. You always will lie. And I don't think that Zelensky's going to take this peace plan, because I don't think, you saw John Kirby. John Kirby just spoke at the White House. He said, no peace plan. Why? It solidifies Russia's illegally gotten gains. What a moron that guy is. All he's doing is condemning another 300,000 Ukrainians to death, because that's what's going to happen. But if there's no peace plan, then Russia's bum rushing these people, and it's over. Ukraine's using all their ammunition trying to defend Bakhmut. They're using more ammunition trying to defend Advika and other. They don't have any ammunition left for their vaunted counterattack, and they're going to run out of ammunition sometime this summer. And when they run out of ammunition in artillery-directed war, the war's over. That's the future. And when Putin said, we're going to safeguard Russia and push them back 150 kilometers, he means that. He means that the Ukrainian military will not be within 150 kilometers of the Russian border. But let me tell you this, too, that if Russia takes Odessa, that's going to become Russia. Once Russia takes Odessa, they're never giving it back. If they take Kharkov, that will be Russia. They're never giving it back. They're never giving Dnipropetrovsk back either if they take it. So if the Ukrainians don't take the peace plan, Russia's taking those 3 cities, and then it's all over for Ukraine. They've lost the Black Sea coast. They've lost economic viability, and they're going to lose the war, and they're going to lose everything. And now we get into a situation where Zelensky's out, a pro-Russian government's in, 3 to 5 years of military occupation, denazification, re-education, imprisonment, execution, whatever you want for all those Bandera people that guy said didn't exist.
I wonder how President Kucinich will handle this. Speaking of Washington, D.C., back in February of this year, they had something called the Rage Against War Machine rally, and our favorite weapons inspector was invited to speak there, but then uninvited because there were some eunuchs involved in this event who just couldn't handle Scott for some weird reason. But Scott went to Washington anyway, and he attended an event that night that was sponsored by the Center for Political Innovation. And he thought he was just going to hang out, socialize, and whatnot, but turned out they wanted him to give a talk. This is how it went.
Really an honor tonight to bring forward our guest of honor, a real hero, someone who deserves to be heard from the heavens. Everyone should hear what this man has to say. Scott Ritter is here. Scott Ritter is here. We are proud that Scott Ritter is here. This is a hero. This is a hero right here. We love you, Scott. We love you. Go ahead and give us some words. Thank you.
Look at Scott get showered with love by Caleb Maupin. You know, we should get Caleb to introduce you at every event. That was a hell of an introduction.
Well, I liked it.
Well, first of all, Caleb, before we go any further, are we pronouncing your name correctly?
I'm Caleb Maupin. My last name was probably Maupin like 100 years ago in France, but my family's been saying Maupin for the last few generations, as far back as anyone can remember. We've Americanized it, so Maupin is fine.
All right. Well, it was actually the first name that we were having trouble with, but
okay. It's from the Bible. Caleb, just
all right. Caleb it is. Just wanted to be respectful and address you properly. You are the founder of the Center for Political Innovation, a bunch of young troublemakers, and you're I mean that in the warmest of ways, of course, and you're holding an event this weekend at the Hyatt Place Hotel in Washington, D.C. You're calling it the Summit Against Hypocrisy. So it's a summit against human nature.
Well, it's because Joe Biden is going to do another one of his silly summits for democracy. And this is a war propaganda show, and he's done it twice already. This will be Summit for Democracy 2023, and it will be a chance for him to roll out all kinds of war propaganda against Russia, against China, against Venezuela, against Iran, against North Korea, at a time when the American people want peace. They want peace, and more than ever, the American people say that there's not a democracy at home. It's pretty clear that these big corporations that are committed to grinding this country into poverty and setting up a low-wage police state here at home, stripping away our civil liberties, letting social media giants like Twitter and Facebook shut down our freedom of speech, that's who he's committed to protecting when the American people want democracy at home, not wars around the world. So we decided to counter it, and it's a very diverse political panel. We're really honored that Scott is going to be there. He's going to be our first important main speaker at the event. Garland Nixon is also going to be there. He's a radio host. He's really, really tremendous. Nick Brana, the chair of the People's Party, that was one of the sponsors of the Rage Against the War Machine rally, is going to be there. Jyoti Brar, who's a frequent guest on Crosstalk, one of the great shows on RT. She's flown in from the United Kingdom. We were really worried they were going to stop her at the border or something, but she's here and she's ready to speak. So we're very happy that she's here and she's going to be speaking. And well, we have a lot of really great guests. The Uhuru Movement, which is this activist group that was just accused of being Russian agents and had their homes raided by the FBI. They're sending people. A lot of people are there, and it's just a place that we're going to voice opposition to this war propaganda show, and we're going to hear the message of this great important person, Scott Ritter, about the danger of a new world war, which he beautifully articulated at our February 19th reception after Rage Against the War Machine. So we're really excited, and we're also really glad to be here on your show.
So you said it's a diverse roster, and it certainly is, but the focus is war policy. That's the particular hypocrisy, or
yeah, I mean,
you're debunking or whatever.
They shouldn't call it a summit for democracy. It's a summit for war. It is a summit for stirring up war and regime change and color revolutions against a variety of countries at a time we should be doing business with them, trading with them, and getting our own economy going instead of trying to isolate ourselves.
Right. So Scott was really speaking very highly of you after that Washington experience, because we've been having some tough times with this cancel culture nonsense.
Yes.
As Scott was putting it a few minutes ago, you got to have cojones. And there are so many people out there who don't have cojones. And what about this guy, Nick Brana? Was he one of the ones who wanted to cancel or didn't want to cancel, Scott?
Well, he's got no problem there at our event. I understood he was on Scott's side. It was the libertarians.
Oh, good. All right. Otherwise, it would be maybe a little uncomfortable.
Nick has been targeted in the same way. And what people don't understand is that anyone who stands up to the war lobby and the military-industrial complex, they are going to run your name through the mud, and they're going to call you every dirty name. I've been subjected to this kind of thing. Nick Brana has been subjected to it. And like Scott says, you got to be tough because they come for anybody. And oh, look, it's on Twitter. It must be true. I mean, that's how they play the game. And you have to be tough at the end of the day. And in real politics, the other thing is you have to be willing to work with people you don't agree with on everything. I know Scott doesn't agree with me. I'm a socialist. I'm an anti-imperialist. I come out of Marxism. But there's libertarians, there's conservatives we work with. I'm willing to work with anybody because our country is in a dangerous situation. And the Biden administration, they want to bring on World War III. They want to set up a low-wage police state. We got to do something about it. If someone's a libertarian and they're against it, if someone's a conservative and they're against it, if someone's a liberal and they're against it, I'd be happy to work with them. And I don't play this game of, oh, are you associated with so-and-so? Oh my God. I don't play that game. And I'm getting tired of it. Everyone has been weakened by social media. It's about making people weaker. It's like an addict, right? You give them a little bit. And then when you give an addict a little bit, then they want their next fix, right? And it's everyone gets on their phone and gets that little bump. Oh, someone liked my post. Someone shared my post. Oh, I got to get my little fix. Oh, I better not break the rules or else I'm not going to get my little reward. It's classic behavioral conditioning that they have set up. And it's classic,
I see why you love this guy, Scott. He's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
he is singing our song.
The funny thing is, when I showed up that night, I mean, I had heard about CPI. You have and he's going to kill me now, but you have a young college kid who's done a couple of podcasts with me, and I can't remember his name, and I apologize.
Bradley Wasser, I think.
Bradley,
right? Yeah,
he's Bradley. There we go. Bradley's awesome dude, and I hope he's there. But Bradley, he's just. It's funny because he reached out and he's like, "Hey, I'm a college kid and I know you'll probably say no, but I'd like to do just, would you come on my podcast? I was like, why not? Give you a shot. Kid asks the best questions in the world. He comes in, he's loaded for bear. He's done his research. He has great questions. He set the questions up. He has great responses. And it's just, to me, is one of the more enjoyable podcasts because he knew what he was talking about. He was informed. And then he told, I didn't know early on, but he was like, no, I'm with Caleb's group. I'm with the college wing of that. And I'm like, my God, this is what we need.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was my exposure to CPI until I, met you guys at the event. And I have to tell you, it. I mean, you were up there doing your whole communist thing, and I'm in the background going, "Oh, my Ronald Reagan roots are just basically boiling here." I never met a nicer group of people, and to be honest, once we got through with the labels, that's why I don't like labels, because once we got through with the labels, we got into the substance. I'm sitting there going, but I sort of agree with him here. I agree with that too. I agree. In fact, everything that Caleb said here tonight, I'm just going, yeah, I'm with you, man, 100%. So screw labels, excuse my language, but forget labels. Let's deal with substance, and that's the beauty of CPI. That's the beauty of Caleb. That's the beauty of Bradley. Is these are substantive people who, and the other beauty thing about it is, let's say we did have a disagreement. I don't know about what, but let's say we did. You know what Caleb's solution would be? Hey, Scott, sit down. Let's have a conversation. Right. What's on your mind? What's going on? Why do you disagree? Hey, gosh, Scott, that was a good point you just made. Hey, guys, what do you think about that? Yeah, we can adjust. We can do that. We're cool because we're all about doing the right thing. And maybe I would sit there and after listening, we're going, well, I no longer have any objections because you've answered all my questions. Or what we could do is say, this is sort of fundamental. I don't know what it would be, but we're not coming together on that. But we're really here because of the big picture. We're here about disarmament. We're here about peace. We're here about ending a war. So we're not going to allow ourselves to get weighed down by this point of disagreement. We're going to just say, okay, we're going to put that here. We're going to focus on that which we agree upon. This is one of the most mature, political organizations I've ever run into. The maturity, the ability to open their mind and to be, and yet every time I mention them to people, they're like, oh, they're radicals. Well, they're not that radical, man. Maybe radical is being open-minded. Maybe radical is being inclusive. But if that's radical,
and besides, don't we want to persuade radicals? We want to persuade everybody. Why would we want to rule out anybody to get on our team?
Yeah. I'm on Team Caleb, man. Caleb Maupin's Center for Political Innovation. These are good people, and I'm grateful you've given me an opportunity to come and speak with you. And I certainly hope that we can continue this cooperation all the way to, who knows, maybe 1 million person rally in New York City. Who knows where we can take this.
Got to stop the danger of a new world war. I mean, it's a matter of urgency. And you as a military analyst have continuously highlighted how dangerous this escalation with Russia is, how dangerous this escalation with China is. And that is what matters. And people don't seem to get that. There's all these videos online where people say how I left the left. Well, I never left the left. The left left me. When I was in college, I was involved in, activist groups. We were going to support, black people around police brutality. We were protesting the Iraq War. And around the time Obama got into office and leading up to Occupy Wall Street, I was arrested at Occupy Wall Street and all of that. Something was off. Something was off. And when the war in Libya happened, right, and we saw the most prosperous African country being bombed and destroyed, I was at Occupy Wall Street and I was trying to get people to do something about this, protest it. But people thought somehow the bombing of Libya and the destruction of this African country was somehow connected with our protest movement. It was a revolution against Gaddafi. Well, anyone who knows anything knows that wasn't a revolution. That was destruction. That was an awful situation. And that, Gaddafi had done so much to raise his people up out of poverty. He built the world's largest irrigation system, the Great Man-Made River. He had done so much. And he was, his country was the most prosperous, the longest life expectancy in Africa, highest rate of literacy. And for Obama to just go in there and destroy that country and then for the leftists to support it under the guise of, oh, well, there's these people protesting and it's a dictator, and that showed that something was off. And that really, I mean, I've done a lot of reading into the history of all of this. In the 1950s, the CIA started something called the Congress for Cultural Freedom, which was a program where they began funneling money to communists and leftists to try and manipulate them to be against the Soviet Union. And in the process of doing that, they completely reinvented left-wing politics to stop being about fighting for the people, building the labor unions, fighting for the working class, and to be this weird movement about intellectual individualism and conformity. And this mess that we call wokeism is a result of CIA funneling of money into leftist movements and circles, you know, pulling off the overthrow of socialism in the Eastern Bloc. And this kind of covert manipulation of leftist politics was very key in that. And then ultimately now left-wing politics is not anti-war. It's not anti-imperialist. It is about trying to give a woke makeover to imperialism and trying to make it look like, you know, the United States has the right to go and invade all kinds of countries because we're the purveyors of human rights. We're the purveyors of women's rights and LGBT rights. We have the best values and we just got to spread them all over the world because we're the most woke and progressive. And it's really, really sad and disgusting. And, you know, for me, socialism has always been about economics. It's been about having the banks and the factories and the major industries organized to serve the public good for the people, not the profits of a wealthy few. It's been about having an economy organized, you know, in the interest of the public, getting rid of the rule of profits. That's not what socialism is about for these people. It's about chaos, death, and destruction. And it's about supporting the Pentagon and supporting their wars, supporting the FBI and cracking down on dissidents, supporting social media censorship. So, you know, I mean, I consider myself to be a leftist, a socialist, and a Marxist, but the so-called left is far away from where I'm at. And I've noticed that every wing of the political spectrum is getting like this. There are libertarians who support Julian Assange, and there are libertarians who oppose him. There are libertarians who support the FBI cracking down on Trumpers and dissidents, and there's libertarians who oppose them. There are people on the right that are supporting the wars and the deep state, and there are people on the right who oppose them. And it's like, at this point, I'm more interested in where you stand on the issues. Are you for the censorship? Are you for Julian Assange? Where do you stand on the issues? Then what label you give yourself? Anyone can call themselves anything. Doesn't really matter. You can say, I'm an anarchist, I'm a socialist, I'm a conservative, I'm a liberal. But where do you actually stand on the pressing issues of the day? And the pressing issue right now is making sure we don't have a new world war. So I'm with you.
Yeah, labels are used to dismiss people, and they're for people who don't want to think.
Now, I have a question, Caleb, just real quick. When you talk about what you say, so you're familiar with Encounter magazine?
Sure, that's in Britain. That was the CIA leftist.
CIA, yeah. Okay. No, I've been playing with the idea of writing something about Encounter magazine for some time now, but it's going to take a lot of time and effort, and right now I don't have it. But it's a fascinating. Everything you just talked about is just a fascinating subtext to the cultural war and the idea. And you're, I guess this is just my awkward way of saying, people listen to what Caleb just said, because this isn't some sort of radical lefty running out here. I'm telling you, as a Ronald Reagan Republican, everything he said is true. I've been following Encounter for a long time. I've been researching it, getting into the whole CIA's, you know, how they manipulate, you know, intellectualism and what the purpose of that was, et cetera. And Caleb is, I can't write the book anymore because Caleb just gave it away. There's nothing for me to write.
This guy is MVP material. And I mean, I already knew about his great attitude from what you told me, Scott, and from talking to him privately. But now I've just heard this guy's really articulate too.
And smart.
Yeah. Well,
take me for instance. There's a lot of really dumb people can be articulate on occasion, but Caleb, on the other hand, is actually. I just listened to the guy talk about a subject that not too many people are familiar with, and he spoke about it in a very articulate.
Right, yeah. Audience, I'm talking to you, audience. Are these two great for events together? Caleb and Scott sharing the bill. Yeah. So let's say hypothetically Caleb goes up first. You think you could follow him, Scott?
No.
We may have to
No,
do it the other way
you
around.
know, I have to be the opening act. He's the closer.
Maybe alternate night to night. But seriously, after you told me how highly you thought of him, I called him and we started talking about doing events together. So we said, well, let's look at Portland, Oregon for one, and
Yeah.
and I'm really hyped up. I want to do more than Portland with you, Caleb.
But I also, Caleb, I'll just put something in here. Bradley,
Yeah.
let's increase the visibility of this kid if he wants it. I don't know if he wants it, but if he doesn't want it, then we got to respect that. But this is a sharp kid who is on, and if we can use him, because to me, Bradley represents a demographic that is not being tapped into, and that's the college, the college demographic. Where is the college students standing up and standing? They've seemed to all been dumbed down. They're too scared, or they're caught up in social media or whatever. But this, if he represents a segment of the college demographic, then we need to tap into Bradley and get from Bradley into colleges so we can motivate them, because that's the key right there. We got a whole bunch of old people like me, and we're set in our ways. I've been there, I've done that. I got the T-shirt, even though I don't have my own T-shirt. I haven't bought it yet. But it's that's the attitude. But Bradley's the generation where they're still figuring things out. They're still trying to figure out who they are, what they are, and we need to tap into that. So if you can talk to Bradley, I'd love to have Bradley be up there with us and get us into these college these college, because he says, the comment right there, college students are a wokester now. Yeah, but they don't have to be. Why do we have to surrender that demographic? Why do we have to sit there and say, well, they're all woke, we don't want to deal with them? No, let's win them over too. And if we win them over, and we can win over, the people in their 30s and the people in their 40s, and my God, even some people in their 60s, suddenly we've done it. We've captured America. And now maybe we can begin the process of putting meaningful political pressure on people to stop the mad rush to nuclear war and begin the process of redefining America's interaction with the rest of the world so that it's not military based. Why can't we learn from the Chinese? Jeff, you and I talked about this earlier. For decades now, the whole thing that we're doing in the Middle East has been driven by U.S. Central Command. The most important person in the Middle East has never been a U.S. ambassador. I mean, not for a long time. It's been the commander of Central Command and whomever the Central Command representative is. The military leads on everything. The ambassador was there to support the military. This is sick, ladies and gentlemen. If that's how America is leading, if that's how we represent ourselves through the military, and look, I'm a former Marine. I love the Marine Corps, but we're not your diplomats. We shouldn't be the people on the front edge of representing who America is. Same thing in Africa. Africa Command was now, that's how we do it. We have generals go in and we talk security, we talk about military assistance. We're talking about all the wrong things. The Chinese just went into the Middle East, sat down with the Saudis and the Iranians, and made peace. And in one fell swoop, they terminated everything we were trying to do for the last 30 years. And now the Saudis and the Iranians are what? Instead of talking about how they can get more air defense systems, more ballistic missiles, more this, they're talking about how can we get trade relations? How can we begin to flow trade towards China, towards this Trans-Eurasian Economic Union? How can we do that? Why aren't we leading that conversation? In Africa, instead of coming in and threatening sanctions with everybody like we did, I mean, amazing timing. And last summer, Tony Blinken went to South Africa, was meeting with the foreign minister, and she said, don't lecture us about this, that. And he said, we will never do that. That's the old America. We don't operate that way. The same time he was in South Africa spewing that lies, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations flies to Uganda and tells them, if you do trade with Russia, we're going to sanction you. And the Africans have all said, we're tired of being threatened by you colonialists. That's not how we do this anymore. And you know who they're turning to? Russia. Where's the proof? 30 African nations were just in Moscow when Xi Jinping was there, and they're all meeting with the Russians saying the same thing. We want to do business with you. You're the ones, because you don't come in and try and dictate things. You don't threaten us. You just want to sit down and do business with us. That's what we should be doing. We should let the military lead. The military should not be the leader. The military should be in the background, silent, disappeared. Don't be visible. We should be leading with diplomats, with businessmen. Imagine if we could get American businessmen to be the people who represent us, where we sit down and we say, how can we do something that actually brings jobs back to America? Now, I know, Caleb, that we're going to have to sit there and work out how we do this job thing and we distribute the wealth. But I'm with you. Trust me.
We're also going to have to work out how we convert the wokesters on college campuses. I'm really intrigued by that.
Here.
Caleb, can you just paint the picture for us a little bit about what you have going on so far on college campuses?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, my whole life growing up, my family, all of my uncles and aunts and parents were always saying to me, oh, Caleb, you're going to love college. You're going to love college. It's going to be so great. And I got to college and I hated college, but that's because college has changed. During the Cold War, the colleges kind of functioned as this place for like kind of free thinkers, right?
Yeah.
Mainstream society, it was love it or leave it, don't question anything. But colleges, that was the place where it was kind of, that's where the dissident voices, the people who learned that there's different sides to every story, that's where they operated. That's ancient history. Now, colleges are the place where, you know, basically we have this shrinking professional managerial class. The industrial jobs are gone. And college is where you get vetted to make sure that you are going to follow the party line, to make sure that you deserve a spot in that professional managerial class. And it used to be colleges where people learn to question things and dissent. Now college is where you learn that dissent and questioning things is not okay and not acceptable. And people, you know, people basically go to college and get told this is the party line, learn to follow it, learn to act it out, or else you don't deserve a spot. And
it's even worse than that, Caleb. We have another podcast that we do on Sundays, and last week we had a San Francisco attorney named Arkady Itkin on, and we were talking about the incident at Stanford when a federal judge, Judge Duncan, went to speak there. And the mob just like attacked him and heckled him to the point where it was impossible for him to speak. And one of the administrators then issued an apology to him. And now the brats are protesting this person who apologized. I mean, how do you, that's why I'm asking you, what's going on with you?
But it's even worse. It's even worse than that, Jeff, because now they go in debt to do this. So in addition to being programmed on what it takes to be Carter, they are now in debt to that system. So they now become the slaves of the system. They have to go into the system and sell their souls to try and work themselves out of this debt. So they have no other option. They go to college, they get brainwashed, they go in debt, and they basically get sucked into this trap that's going to trap them forever. They're never going to be able to get out of it.
Yeah, it's a ripoff. It's a financial ripoff scheme. And I know so many people that are stuck in this trap of student debt, you know.
So again, I ask you, Caleb, what do you have going on at colleges? I mean, I'm just curious.
We have a number of younger people that are members of our organization. And, we have the American Student Union, which is an organization we're aligned with. It was back in the 1930s, you know, folks that were part of the anti-fascist kind of coalitions. They built the American Student Union. There's people that we work with in different organizations. They recently revived the ASU, and they have people on campuses. There's going to be people from the ASU at the conference this weekend in DC. And they do a lot of important work. We're looking to have kind of a forum on the criminal justice system, maybe in the coming months with the ASU. That's not one thing we've been working on. And that, the college campuses, it's weird because, you know, you talk about the 1960s radicals. Those people were disagreeing with their professors. Their professors were telling them the Vietnam War was good, and they were getting kicked out of school for setting up literature tables to oppose the Vietnam War. Now their professors are the ones that told them to go protest that judge, gave them extra credit for being there, rewarded them, and they're all competing for who can shout the loudest and kiss up and get the highest grades. It is a totally different dynamic and a totally different atmosphere. A lot of these old
California.
A lot of these old 60s radicals, you know, they got tenure and they got nudged, and the Rockefeller think tanks and the Ford Foundation gave them grants not to write about Marxism, but to focus on the white privilege and the oppression theory and the intersectionality, and said, you know, stop reading Marx, read Judith Butler, read Bell Hooks, talk about why straight white men are the problem, and why people are being oppressed by coffee cups or whatever. And this is where the incentivization has gone. And that is how they've kind of reinvented left-wing politics to be this new kind of sinister movement that, in essence, what it's saying is the American people are the problem. that they're bad, right? That they have too much stuff, they're too comfortable, and they need to just get poorer in order to save the planet from climate change. They need to be ashamed of who they are, to repent for their white privilege, and we need to just accept the United States being demolished into this global financial system that's really good for big bankers, and it's really good for Twitter, and it's really good for Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, but it's not good for the American people. That's what they're doing. They're trying to just kind of grind the United States into this open international system. You read what Anne Marie Slaughter, who was Hillary Clinton's State Department, one of their thinkers, what they put out. That's what they want, an open international system, the rules-based global order, the rule of these big banks and monopolies over the world. And America, as we knew it, as a prosperous country with a middle class, with cities like Pittsburgh and Detroit and Minneapolis with good paying jobs, and that's ancient history. They want New York City and Southern California as trading hubs in their global financial apparatus, Wall Street and Hollywood, and the rest of the country is flyover country with this annoying group of people, the American people. And, at the CPI, we see it differently. Human beings should be viewed as an asset. I think college should be free, but not because it's a gift as a handout, but because you're investing in your population. You want your population to be smart. I think healthcare should be available. Again, not just because it's a handout, but because you want your population to be healthy so they can be productive, so they can go out and work and create. The reason that China is soaring ahead is they invest in their people. They train engineers, they train scientists, they train doctors, they train their people. We don't do that. We rely on brain drain. During the Cold War, that was the strategy, right? Is drain the developing world of their engineers, their scientists, and their doctors. Our school system in the United States can be garbage and our population can get dumber. And that's okay because we can strip the developing world of their doctors and their engineers and their scientists. And that'll prevent the developing world from having the engineers and scientists they need so we can keep dominating their economy. And that's the game that's been played. And it's been bad for the American people. It's been bad for the developing world. And China broke out of this and they invest in their population. Their people are getting smarter. They are building high-speed railway. They're making breakthroughs in computer technology. Huawei makes better phones than Apple does. And so our response is to, accuse it of being spying and try to block Huawei around the world. But they're investing in their people. They believe in growth. And that's really, when it really gets down to it, that's the issue, is the big ultra rich don't believe in growth anymore. They want to degrow the economy. They're Malthusians. They think the problem is there's too many people in the world and that we all have too much of a comfortable lifestyle. And to save the economy, they want to degrow all of us. They want to grind us all into poverty. Whereas countries around the world say, no, there is no limit to human growth. There is no limit to human creativity. And we need a government that can rationally organize the economy in order to unleash that human creativity, to allow things to blossom and grow. And China is the success story of that. I mean, they raised millions of people out of poverty. But, Russia in the 90s, you, Scott, have talked about in the 90s, it was just devastated economically. But then Putin came in there and he put the oil and the gas under public ownership and he reorganized the economy so that they could use that gas revenue to rebuild their industries and subsidize it. And now Russia has experienced amazing economic expansion because they reorganized their economy to put the interests of their people first, to invest in their population. That's why they hate Putin. Under Yeltsin, Russia was being just devastated. It was impoverished. And Putin put an end to it. And he rebuilt Russia and he got them out of the rut that came from the fall of the Soviet Union. There are two global financial systems at this point. There's the Western capitalist, neoliberal Western system. I don't know what you want to call it. And then there is this emerging economy around the Belt and Road Initiative and around the Eurasian Economic Union, the Bolivarian alternative of Latin America, the BRICS. This is a new economy that's about growth. And then there is neoliberalism, which is about speculation, making profits, making money out of nothing. And it's coming crashing down. Look what happened to the Silicon Valley Bank. Look at what we're all bracing for the next 2008. Well, why are we bracing for that? They've driven down our wages. They've gotten rid of the good paying jobs. People in the United States, the household debt rate is through the roof, student debt, credit card debt. There's no physical economy here. And if you're not actually making anything, if we're not actually getting wealthier as a country, if the living standard is not going up and the profits on Wall Street are just money that's made out of other money, speculation, usury, whatever you want to call it, that's what our economy in the United States is based on. If there's no physical economy expanding, pretty soon it's all going to fall to pieces because it's fictitious capital. That's what Marx called it. He said it's fictitious capital. It's money that's not based on any real value. money only creates wealth when it's combined with human labor. Human labor is the source of all wealth. It's human beings with our labor power and our creativity. We're what creates wealth in this world. And when money is just made with other money, when human labor is not involved, value is not being created. And we're facing a big financial crisis in the United States, facing these economic realities, which China, Russia, and a number of countries around the world have broken out from. And now they want to save their system with war. They're hoping if some, dramatic explosion, if they can, have a huge catastrophic episode of destruction, that can get their economy going again. And that's a nightmare. We shouldn't allow that to happen. I think all of us have a responsibility to humanity to oppose the drive toward war.
Do you completely reject capitalism, or you just want to shift things more towards socialism?
Well, I want to be clear. I think there's a role for the market in socialism. We learned the Soviet Union needed to change in the 80s. The way they were set up, they couldn't continue that way. And they weren't able to do so. And so their system fell apart. China did change, and they adjusted their socialist system to have a market sector, to utilize the strengths of the market, but have the market controlled to make sure that growth continued, that you didn't have the irrational problems of capitalism. And 21st century socialism, which is the new form of socialism that's expanding around the world, the success of it is its ability to utilize the market. For example, Vietnam, they talk about Vietnam's economic miracle. Well, it's because they have a program to help their people become small business owners. I was just in Nicaragua last November for the elections, and the success of the socialist government of Nicaragua is their micro entrepreneurship program. They make sure everyone has health care. They make sure everyone has jobs. The power plants are all run by the state, and they regulate, corporations, but then they use government power to enable people to start their own businesses, to start their own stores. And it's been wildly successful. And that the Soviet model, the Soviet way of doing things is never going to return. Right? It had its problems. It did have great successes, lifting people out of poverty, inventing space travel, defeating the Nazis, building the world's largest steel industry and the world's largest hydroelectric power plants. But then after you get over that first hurdle of industrialization, the 20th century socialist model, the Stalin model, it doesn't work so well, because once you get over that hurdle, the government shouldn't be making children's toys. The government shouldn't be running restaurants. The government shouldn't be running hotels. These things, you need the market. You need consumers to be able to vote with their dollars on it, but not steel and not healthcare and not banking and not natural resources. But I think there's definitely a room for the market. So if that's what you're asking, am I totally?
That is what I'm asking, and you explained it very clearly. One of the things I don't like about Bernie Sanders and his dopey followers is that they really don't even explain what their concept is. They blur the line between democratic socialism and social democracy, and the average person doesn't even know what the hell he's advocating. I don't know just out of curiosity, what do you think about Bernie Sanders and how he blathers about social democracy or democratic socialism?
He's not a socialist. He's an advocate of an expanded welfare state. That's what he advocates. And I'm not opposed to what he advocates. I think college should be free. I'm opposed to the student debt ripoff. I think healthcare should be provided to the population. I don't like the way our healthcare system is run, but that's not socialism. Socialism is a rationally planned economy where the banks and the major industries are organized to serve public good and not the profits of a few. And what I also don't like about the Bernie Sanders movement is that the way it's framed up is it's very negative. It's kind of like, corporations get free stuff all the time. The government's rigged, so give us some free stuff. And it's very pessimistic and kind of cynical. But I think about Roosevelt and what he did with the Works Progress Administration. The economy was crashing and burning, and he said, all right, the market won't do it, so I'm going to hire millions of young people and put them to work, and they're going to build Key West Highway, they're going to build LaGuardia Airport, and they're going to go out and we're going to build a strong country. And it was this mobilization, this optimistic mobilization. That's what the Soviet Union was built up with. You read about Stalin's 5-year plans, it was that kind of mobilization. You read about the successes that they've had in countries like Venezuela and Cuba and other countries. It's been when you kind of mobilize people to go out and build and construct and make life better. It's an optimistic vision. I don't get that from the Bernie Sanders crowd. I get this, screw this, give me some free stuff, give me it. And that's not the attitude I particularly like. Now, Bernie Sanders also, we have this idea in the United States that like the post office is socialism and, Amazon is capitalism, and there's a little bit of both. That's not the essence. Socialism is the economy organized and forced to work in the interest of the country overall? Or is it a market economy where the rich just kind of do what they want, and we have utter chaos, and you have, you know, people becoming homeless because there are too many houses, people becoming hungry because there's too much food? Capitalism, I think, is an irrational system. So you need a popular government representing the people, a democratic government by the people for the people, to control the major centers of economic power, to make sure that the population overall is getting wealthier and such. So, you know, that's kind of my vision. And in some ways, you could argue that some of the founding fathers thought this as well. Alexander Hamilton was an advocate of a national bank. He thought we should have a national bank that would facilitate, and he used, you know, the national bank to set up the lighthouses and to stimulate the U.S. economy. Also, if you read Thomas Paine and his writing on the concept of agrarian justice and his land reform policies and stuff. So I don't think, and that's another thing I get widely attacked for. I'm patriotic. I love America. I call myself a patriotic socialist. In China, they call their system socialism with Chinese characteristics. So I've provocatively said what I believe in, and what CPI we talk about, is socialism with American characteristics. We're never going to have the Russian system or the Chinese system or the Venezuelan system here. The only type of socialism that will ever work in America will be a uniquely American socialism, rooted in our own history, our own traditions, our own background, to address the problems that we face here in this country. And we should be waving the flag and making clear that we're socialists because we want to make the country better. I'm a socialist because I love this country, not because I want to destroy it. If I wanted to destroy this country, I'd be in with the ruling elite here. That's what they're doing right now. They're destroying the country, and they're leading us toward a new world war. You know, and it just seems pretty basic. And that, unfortunately, as a result of, you know, what Scott referenced before with Encounter magazine, socialism has become synonymous with this movement of pessimism, of just kind of being angry at the world, hating the people, viewing the people as a menace. They had Encounter in the UK. They had Partisan Review in the United States. Susan Sontag, Hannah Arendt. I mean, this is some pretty vile stuff that they came up with. And,
right.
and
Are you a spontaneous person, Caleb? Would you say? Are you
what
a
do you mean?
spontaneous? Well, because our host in Texas he's not the only one, I'm sure, but he's among those who are very impressed with what they're hearing now. And he says, why don't I see if we can get Caleb to join us in Texas next week? Those are the dates right there, Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay.
Got anything planned?
I'm going to be here in DC because the Summit for Democracy is going on, and we have some, there's going to be some of my people here, after our event. They're going to be like protesting the Democracy Summit. So I don't think I can get on a plane to Texas this week. I could, it's a little short notice, but I know,
but hey, I'm not going to be the one to ignore the invitation. I just pass it along.
But I would love to talk with people in the future. We'll
do that. Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
So good idea, Ryan, but you can't get a guy like Caleb that easily. We'll have to plan it. All right. So this weekend, so you mentioned all the speakers, and people can donate whatever they want, right? That's
it's a free event, but you can give a donation at the door. Everyone in their packet is also going to get the QR code where they can donate with their phone or whatever. That's how it's going to work. We do have heavy security at these kind of events because we've gotten a lot of threats, and we didn't release the name of the hotel until the last minute and stuff like that because a lot of people don't appreciate what we have to say. But we make a point of protecting everybody and doing things. But yeah, it's a public event. It'll be at the Hyatt Place Hotel, and it's going to be great. 2021 M Street. Doors open at 1 o'clock. It's going to be good. We'll have coffee at 1 as the doors open. People can kind of trickle in, and we'll probably get going as everyone's ready and the crowd gets going, and we'll do it. And it's going to be a tremendous event. We're really honored to have Scott there, among other great guests. There'll be music. It's going to be a great event.
And Scott is speaking Saturday afternoon, but you're also having event activities on Sunday, correct?
Yeah, it's a 2-day event. It'll start up again at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. Jyoti Brar is going to give kind of a long presentation on Sunday morning, and Sunday afternoon we're going to have different speakers go over the different countries that are going to be smeared by Joe Biden. And we got someone who's of Filipino heritage is going to show how the USA is meddling in the Philippines with these NGOs trying to prevent the Philippines from having a good relationship with China. We're going to have a speaker about Serbia to talk about what Clinton did in former Yugoslavia and how devastating it is. We're going to have different people speak about different issues. We're going to talk about some countries people don't hear a lot about. Angola, for example, right? Angola is a country where you have, a government that has traded a lot with Russia and China. And, after the Civil War ended in 2002, they had some of the highest growth rates in the world, 11% GDP growth. And then the United States, the National Endowment for Democracy and all of them got in there. And Isabel dos Santos, who is she is the richest woman in Africa. Joe Biden has declared her a criminal. They've got money laundering charges against her. She's in hiding. Why? Because she was working with Russia and China to make Angola a wealthier country, and they basically pulled off a coup. And now she's in hiding, fearing for her security because she was running the state-run oil industry, Sonangol in Angola, and using it to facilitate growth. She gave hundreds of thousands of people their first job. This is a woman. You want to talk about an innovator, a black woman who got ahead in the world and organized to try and lift people out of poverty. Just a real hero, Isabel dos Santos. The Biden administration has just viciously targeted her and gone after her and meddled in Angola's politics to try and stop the wave of economic growth that she set up. There's going to be a great presentation from one of our members, Tyler, about Isabel dos Santos and Angola. We're going to cover a lot of wide variety of topics. So, tomorrow or Saturday will be the focus on the domestic economy. We're going to have Scott and Garland Nixon first, and then a panel on the domestic situation in the United States. Then we're going to have an evening plenary. Then Sunday morning, we're going to hear from our guest, Joe T. Brar, who's going to present on the danger of a new world war and how the different communist groups around the world have reacted to it, the divisions among communists around the world. Then we're going to have our panel on different countries with many speakers addressing many different countries. And yeah, it's going to be a whole weekend that we're doing things.
All right, Scott, are you going to wear a jacket and tie this time? Because at the other event, it was spontaneous. You see, Scott was just dressed very casually. Now look at Caleb. He's got the jacket and tie, the whole thing. What do you?
I'll be doing the Caleb the sartorial look.
Okay. So Caleb, the format of our podcast is to primarily take questions from the audience, and I think that if our audience knew in advance that you would be here, they would have some questions for you. So will you come back on another date, and we can promote that you'll be on, and some of the questions
Anytime.
you can field as well as Scott?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to return.
All right, great. Scott, do we have a new bromance going with this guy or what?
Oh yeah. No, we're good. Yeah. This look, this is the way forward. This is, Jeff, you and I have talked about, we're there's only 24 hours in a day. If there was 48 hours in a day, we'd have a lot of things done that we're planning. But for instance, a book I wrote a couple years ago called Waging Peace: The Art of War for the Anti-War Movement. We're trying to reconceptualize into an activist's guide, to help people organize for activism. And the thing is, Jeff and I are talking about it, but we need to start linking up with organizations. So Caleb, one of the things I'd like to talk to you about is how we can work with CPI to turn this project into organize. Because again, I can sit here all I want and say, on June 22nd, 2024, we're going to put 1 million people in the Central Park. Now, that's a great idea. I love the idea. But me saying it isn't going to happen. It isn't going to happen. Me saying it and then meeting with people like you that have a national outreach, and we talk about organizing, we start creating an organizational structure that has the mission. The U.S. government has done this. When I was a firefighter, in order to become a firefighter, you had to do this special training for, planning, and you take all these courses, but they basically teach you how to write a mission plan and all that kind of stuff. We need to start writing a mission plan for Central Park.
Yes.
And we need to start identifying tasks, and we need to start putting the tasks out there and getting people to stand up. We need to start figuring out what the costs are, things of that nature, if this is going to happen. And you and I, the only reason I'm bringing it up is because you and I have talked about, Nick and I have talked about this, and we need to do it. But I mean, I think this is what we need to start doing, Jeff. We need to start.
Yeah, and this might actually be this might be the tipping point to collaborate with Team Caleb. Caleb, I don't know if you're familiar, but this is the book we're talking about. It's
I'll bring a copy of it. I'll bring a copy of it this weekend and give it to you.
Yeah,
Great.
it's based on Sun Tzu's philosophy, but applying it to the peace movement originally. But now we're saying not specifically the peace movement, but however we want to categorize the new breed of activist. So,
Excellent.
all right,
Great.
we'll check that out. All right, so thanks a lot for joining us, Caleb. Everybody, go to the website, which is cpiusa.org, and you can register for the event in Washington this weekend. Thanks a lot for joining us. It was very interesting, and please come back.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care, Caleb.
Yep.
He's the real deal. He's the real
No,
deal.
he is. I mean, you can sit here and make fun of people all you want, and I do. Trust me, I'm one of
Life
these,
isn't worth living if we can't disparage people.
Right, but I mean, so I always, I'm like, Marxist, socialist, but then you sit there and you listen to these guys, and you're just like, okay, they're smarter than I am. I mean, he's just a very sharp guy, and his organization is full of sharp people. That's the other thing. This isn't,
he operates in the realm of reason, even if you don't, agree with him necessarily. He's not just spewing nonsense and emotionalism. He has real reasoning.
He's thought this all through. He's one of those guys you just don't want to get into a debate with haphazardly, because you think you're going to get in there and you realize suddenly, hey, look, the fact that the guy knew what Encounter magazine was told me that this is
he's a real deal. That's one of the telltale signs. All right, should we squeeze in a few live questions before we call it a day? All right. Ann Moss, thanks a lot for your backstage work tonight. We appreciate it, especially since there's a schedule change, but Ann stepped up to the plate. And these are some questions that are coming in live on YouTube and Facebook. From Belugi the Beluga, thanks a lot for the donation. If the Ukraine conflict comes to an end, will Russia provide the same level of support to China if the U.S. starts a war over Taiwan?
Russia will back China the way that China needs to be backed. That'll be diplomatically, that'll be economically. It won't be militarily, I don't believe, because China doesn't need military support. Just like Russia doesn't need Chinese military support, China doesn't need Russian military support. But Russia will give China all the political backup it needs, all the diplomatic support, and will do its best. Because China will be targeted for sanctions, and so it's going to be up to Russia to help run cover for China to make sure that the Chinese economy isn't contracted, etc. I think, look, we're dealing with Team Russia China right now. It's almost impossible going forward to say Russia and then say China. This is a team now. It's a friendship. It's better than any alliance. There's no limits. And so, yeah, I think Russia's there for China for the duration.
Okay. Putin and Xi are ultimate bros. Well, looks like that's possible now, huh? Hey, Scott, any thoughts on the Ukrainian spring counteroffensive? That's a question coming from Norman Lear's brother, King.
Look, there's talk about it, and I don't think it's just idle talk. There are, if you count up all the tanks that everybody's promised, 100, 150 tanks are supposed to be on their way. Marder, German infantry fighting vehicles, the Bradleys are on their way. The Strykers are on their way. Some artillery's on their way. So the point is, I think we've got maybe 2-3 brigades worth of stuff showing up with troops that have been trained on it, by the way. So it's not just equipment showing up and parking. There's troops. And if the Ukrainians can withstand the pressure to send these troops to fill the holes in the line that are appearing right now, to throw them into Bakhmut, they can withstand that pressure and hold on to these 3 brigades. That's a potential counterattack force right there. But I'm here to tell you right now, let's say they do that. 3 brigades just isn't enough. There's just not enough. This is not going to be a repeat of what happened in September. In September, the Russians were stretched thin. They had a single line of defense with many holes in it, and the Ukrainians were able to, thanks to intelligence from the West, to find the gaps, shoot the gaps, get into the rear, and there was nothing to stop. The Russian lines are a lot tighter. They're organized in a way, again, doctrinally, to create so-called pockets so the Ukrainians would attack. First of all, if they even make it to the front lines. The Russians have good, they're reaching out. So as the Ukrainians mass and move towards the front line, their attacks are going to be broken up by artillery right off the bat. So let's say they can work their way through that, have their own counter artillery, counter battery fire, suppress the Russians, make it to the front. There'll be strong points, so the Ukrainians will break around the strong points, all doctrinally, and they'll move into what's called fire pockets. Those fire pockets will be pre-registered with artillery and air, and they'll be hit there too. But let's say the Ukrainians with their 3 brigades, 3 brigades, and they get through that. You got to hit the second line of defense, because now the Russians have a second line of defense. So now they're going to hit that, but the momentum's broken up. The 3 brigades isn't enough. You need 3 more, but they don't have them. And that's the whole thing. They just don't have enough to get this thing through. Plus, all of this requires a massive amount of artillery fire support. This is why the West has been telling Ukrainians, stop firing artillery at the rate that you're firing it right now. Why hasn't Bakhmut fallen? Every day the Russians are making incremental changes, but why hasn't it fallen? Because the Ukrainians are pouring artillery fire in. And the Ukrainians are pretty good at artillery. They don't have as much as the Russians do, but they have very effective systems with very good targeting from the United States. And so they're able to break up some of the Russian attacks. They're able to hit Russian reinforcements as they come in. They're able to suppress command and control. They're able to do a number of things with this artillery that slows the Russian offensive down. But it's eating up ammunition they don't have. They're burning through ammunition at a rate that's far greater than that can be replenished. And they are going to run out of ammunition. There are some people are saying that they're really going to run out sometime in August. That's why Zelensky kept saying, if we don't have the tanks by August, it's too late. Because he knew. Just basic math. You run out of ammo, you can't replace it. In August, we hit 0. But now what they're doing is they've pushed that date now to July and now June, and they may run out of ammunition in June. If they keep shooting it the way they're doing, they're going to run out in May. That's why NATO's just done this emergency 1,000,000-round thing. Everybody's pledging, but it's like the telethon. You have the telethon. They got the number board up there, and send in your pledges. So everybody's calling in. I'm pledging this. I'm pledging that. Take a pledge to a coffee shop and try buy a cup of coffee. Can't, because it's not real money. It doesn't become real money until you collect the pledge. So NATO's sitting there going, we're pledging 1,000,000 rounds, but it's 1,000,000 rounds over time, meaning that most of it's not going to be collected till a year or more down the line. Now, again, I'm just a simple Marine, but here we are in March, and a year means March of next year. But if they're running out of ammunition in August, but now July, maybe June, the pledge is meaningless. Meaningless. The Ukrainians are running out of ammunition. They're not going to have enough ammunition to sustain this defense that they're pulling, let alone a counteroffensive. We may see something happen. We may see the Ukrainians launch some sort of attack, but I'm here to tell you right now that it's going to get broken up. It's going to be defeated. It's going to be crushed. And when that happens, the Ukrainians literally have nothing left. Nothing left. They already have nothing. Right now, NATO's put a lot to get them some armored vehicles, some tanks and stuff. When they burn through that, there's literally nothing left. Czechoslovakia just said, we're done in the help Ukraine business. We have nothing left. The Germans are looking around saying, we don't have anything left either. Nobody has anything left. That's the problem. Nobody has anything left. Now, some people like Seymour Hersh have come out and said they talked to sources about that means that the last option is to put boots on the ground. But when I say people have nothing left, I mean they have nothing left. There's no boots on the ground to put. Germany doesn't have an army that's capable of doing that. Poland doesn't have an army capable of projecting power. Nobody does. The United States has 3-4 brigades in Europe. That's it. And even then, we don't have enough ammunition to sustain combat. Ladies and gentlemen, this war is over. There's going to be a lot of fighting, a lot of dying coming up, but this war is over. It's finished for Ukraine. They aren't able to do this. And this spring offensive, counteroffensive they're talking about, if it happens, will peter out that quick.
How dare you?
All right, let's take one more question from our beloved audience. Sveg. Can other nations other than the U.S. and EU nations prosecute Zelensky once the war is over?
I mean, they'd have to come up with the jurisdictional authorities, and what crime is he going to be prosecuted for? I mean, the irony of trying to prosecute Zelensky for executing your orders. I don't think it would work. But I don't think Zelensky is going to be prosecutable because he's going to be dead. I honestly believe that Zelensky doesn't take advantage of this Chinese peace plan. It's over for Zelensky. He's only of use so long as he brings in money. That's all Zelensky is good for right now. He is the conduit for money that he then uses to go around and bribe people. And the moment that money dries up, as it's getting ready to do, Zelensky ceases to have a viable function, and the people will kill him and put somebody in who's better at bringing money in than he is. So, Zelensky's days on this earth are numbered. I would like to see, just because he has a wife and he has kids, I'd like to see him leave Ukraine and go live in his $300 million Miami Beach home or villa or wherever where he wants. I wish he could do that. I hope he does that, but he's not, because he's not that kind of guy. He actually is one of these idiots that believes in the hype. He thinks he's actually Winston Churchill. He thinks he's Thomas Jefferson. You see it. He wants to speak at the Oscars, and when he doesn't, he pouts. If he's not the superstar, he's not the center of attention. He's out there literally telling the American people, "Help me kill my own troops, or else your sons and daughters are going to be fighting and dying." No, Zelensky, let me tell you, they're not going to be fighting and dying, and you don't get to make that statement. You are literally a comedian who's heading up a government of the most corrupt nation in Europe. You're not the center of the universe. Nobody wants you. Nobody likes you, and you're going to die.
All right, another controversial Scott Ritter statement. You cannot prosecute a corpse. And we hope that Zelensky is not killed, but if he is, please order this T-shirt before you're dead. President Zelensky will be happy to sell it to you at scottrittermerch.com. Also, we have Scott Ritter's book on sale there, autographed by the author. That would be Scott, Disarmament and the Time of Perestroika. And disarmament is numero uno goal. This Saturday in Washington, D.C., and go to scottritterextra.com for all the info on that. And then next week, we'll be in Texas, at Liberty Hill and Elgin. And I'm getting some weird messages about the third event we were supposed to do. I don't know what to think about that, except we'll just see. And what is, hold us. So let's think about this for a second, Scott. Today's Thursday. We would normally do a podcast on Tuesday, but I guess we won't next Tuesday. So I guess all we can say is we don't know what day we might do anything at all next week, right?
Well, we can shoot for Friday, can't we?
Yes, we can shoot for Friday.
And we could do the 1 hour on Monday.
Well, I'm traveling on Monday.
Then we can't do it on Monday.
Right, and you're
So
traveling.
the 1 hour might just have to be pushed.
Not at all this week, or maybe we can do something from Texas. So let's
well, if you can organize it, I'll be there so we can make it happen. We can do it live in studio.
Perhaps. All right, so let's think about that. But to you, our beloved audience, all we can say for now is it won't be the usual schedule next week. Thank you, as always, for your support. We certainly appreciate it. And thanks to Ann Moss for her great work backstage. Caleb Maupin, great guest. Scott Ritter, great co-host. You're the man. You're my favorite weapons inspector. And that's not the wine talking. I didn't even have a one glass today. Look at that.
No, you're too busy listening to Caleb.
That's right. This way you know it's real. It's from the heart, not the alcohol talking. All right, everybody, take care, and we'll see you again soon. All I have to do is find the outro. I don't have that ready. Sorry. Oh, there we go.